Ms. Nadia Samdin.
Mr. Speaker, sir, uninterrupted and affordable access to energy is one of the cornerstones of modern civilization. From keeping the lights on and putting food on the table, our ability to get to work or powering the devices that have become so integral in both our personal and professional lives, energy is the bedrock of what makes life powered by technology possible. Fossil fuels have been the primary source of meeting our energy requirements for decades. However, the world has become increasingly aware about the negative environmental impacts of fueling our energy needs, primarily through fossil fuels. How we cross over to cleaner energy matters. Do we wait until after the switch from gas to green to make an impact? Or do we take incremental steps to do what we can in the here and now as we make the transition? I am glad to see the government's conviction to retiring almost all existing natural gas-fueled power plants over the next 1 to 2 decades as part of our enhanced 2030 nationally determined contributions and 2050 long-term low-emissions development strategy. We have already seen some exciting ways which Singapore plans on harnessing greener energy options, such as solar energy, clean energy imports, and low-carbon alternatives. In July this year, we officially opened one of the world's largest floating solar farms. As we debate this bill, COP26 is underway in Glasgow. Natural gas power plants provide more than 95% of Singapore's electricity demand today. So I am heartened by the recent announcement that Singapore intends to import 30% of our electricity supply from low-carbon sources by 2035, for example, through subsea cables from Indonesia and Australia. I am also glad that EMA will verify the cleanliness of energy inputs, including requiring proof of carbon output. So steps are being taken. As we move to ensure the importation of energy from more carbon-neutral sources, I hope that the overall supply chain in which the energy is transported here will also be taken into consideration when evaluating the reduction in carbon footprint from these efforts. And in the same vein, I hope that we will also apply rigorous environmental and sustainability standards in the construction of the infrastructure. In this bill, I support the levers proposed to require, not just encourage, power generation companies to improve the energy efficiency of their existing units and shift towards cleaner and more efficient modes of power generation, as the amendments enable the EMA to implement policies, standards to require electricity generation licensees to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In this regard, it would be important for EMA to start work early alongside industry for successful compliance with these standards. I would also like to ask if the EMA is planning for a transition period for such companies, and if so, how long will this be? Next, the proposed amendments to have EMA build, acquire, own, and operate critical power sector infrastructure if the private market fails to do so is a prudent one towards safeguarding the security of our power system, although I recognize that certain stakeholders are concerned that these units would compete with existing units in the Singapore wholesale electricity market, with the effect of depressing wholesale electricity prices. I also support the move to allow EMA to raise capital and issue bonds, as this protects our energy plans to a better degree from adverse market forces. Few governments can or choose to fill the infrastructure investment gap alone. With the Minister's approval, the EMA will now have the ability to raise capital, not just from the government, but also any source in or outside of Singapore. I think it is important for Singaporeans to be able to participate and benefit from supporting the nation's infrastructural goals. Will preference be given to Singaporeans who would like to participate in the issuance of such an infrastructure bond? And under what conditions will EMA look to raise capital from outside of Singapore? In the event that large amounts of overseas capital are approved of and raised, will the government make the sources of such capital public knowledge? Given the lessons we can glean now from the instability of such markets, I stand in support of the spirit of the move, but I do seek some clarity in the execution. On the instability of the energy markets, we've seen a few reports of private energy retailers closing due to rising prices. In this bill, there are clarifications on the ability to draw down on electricity retailers' deposits to offset outstanding settlement payments. And this move intends to protect consumer interests to reduce the amount of default costs borne by consumers in the event of insolvencies. It has been reported that at least 5 energy retailers have announced exits, while others have stopped taking on new customers and are considering changes to their business model. I applaud the government for taking the prudent step of protecting consumers' interests by drawing down on these deposits. However, many of these companies have employees too. And in these difficult circumstances, I would also like to ask if the government will also consider ensuring that there is support for such employees from these companies who are choosing to downsize or exit. The task of switching over from gas to green is a complex one and will take some time. We must pay careful consideration to ensure that while we are in transition, supply is reliable and prices are stable. Given our limitations as a small city-state, I am cognizant that we will have to straddle two worlds before we can cross over the picket fence into greener pastures. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I am looking forward to the journey from gas to green with stronger compliance and standards and protection for critical infrastructure and consumers. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the bill.